Good morning, guys. Sorry that I completely forgot to post this earlier at the end of the week. I think we said Saturday till midnight, but if you guys want Sunday until midnight, I'll keep it open till then. I was reading some Calvin and Hobbes with James this morning, and he picked one out that he wants you guys to see. So here it is. Gosh, it's 1:30 and I'm still awake. Someone must have waylaid Mr. Sandman. I just can't get comfortable. I'm exhausted, but I can't fall asleep. Maybe if I just lie still and think about how good it feels to be in bed, and how soft the pillow is, and how very, very tired I am. Phooey, this isn't working. All I want is to get some sleep. This is awful. Calvin? Gee, Mom, are you awake too? It's time to get up. It can't be. It's the middle of the night, and I haven't slept a wink yet. Calvin? Come on, up and at 'em. Blink, blink. This is going to be a bad day. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Calvin and Hobbes, but we have all the library books checked out for Calvin and Hobbes. They're pretty popular around our family. Okay, so if you guys remember, we ended class, Ryan brought up the question about sympathy, and we were talking on how that might connect also to all the reader addresses. And Ryan's question in sympathy was sort of connected to form as well, thinking about does this life writing or autobiography, does it have the same techniques for eliciting sympathy as novels do? So the quick examples that I wanted to look at, one is on page 118, which is the very end of chapter 13. It's literally the last paragraph. And she says, "Reader, now that we have come to the end of this chapter, I can say what I have been all anxiety to tell you from its beginning. Please look back to chapter 8 and see how hard the right woman had to struggle to convey herself to the right place." And this is following a poem that that Punch publishes about her, and it uses that phrase, the right woman. So I was curious with this particular reference. First of all, it's a reader reference, and it comments so much on the process of writing itself. So it kind of says, since beginning this chapter, she's been anxious to tell us something. But then it also has directions to turn back to another chapter, which I would be curious to know if people did that. Sometimes when I'm just really in a mode of wanting to read, I don't do things like that, but I did. I went and looked back. And so it's an interesting description, and I remember reading it of how hard it was for her to get to Crimea. But I just found it interesting that she didn't just tell us that again, but she gave us instructions to look back at something she had already written, which just really draws attention to this as a text rather than as her as a person or her life. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, of course, it connects to this question of sympathy because it presents her as, moral, virtuous, she's in the right, and that she went through all these hardships and struggle. So that one was kind of an interesting moment. One other quick one that I think happens a couple different times, and this is just a few pages over in chapter 14 on page 120. Near the bottom of the page, or the bottom of a really long paragraph that starts, "I have said that winter had not ended." Towards the end of that paragraph, she says, "Tell me, reader, can you fancy what the want of so simple a thing as a pocket handkerchief is?" And then she launches into a story about an officer who wishes he had a pocket handkerchief. There's also maybe a bit of humor in that story too. So I'm wondering about that pattern of hailing us as the reader, asking if we can possibly imagine the situation, right? So she's sort of both indicating how other we are to the situation, but then also calling on us to have sympathy for that situation. And then she kind of launches into a story that illustrates it. So I'm wondering if that's kind of a pattern too throughout the novel. So what I'd like you to do is to find your own moment or passage that has some kind of reader address, and then just kind of pick it apart. And what is she doing there? Does it connect to sympathy in any way? Does it connect to form? Does it have some other purpose that is at work in her text? We talked a little bit about that too in class. It's like, what are her goals and motives? Bree's question about what does she want to be remembered for? So what are these reader addresses doing? and are they a form or a device for sympathy, and then thinking about form too. Reader addresses occur in realist novels as well, but are they working differently here in an autobiography?